Hello everyone, thank you for watching. This is Hadrian, and this is a look back on Roman Ascension, Series 1 for my channel. For those of you who are not aware, a look back is something that I do for most of my longer running series. This is the first one that I'm going to do, but I intend to keep doing them for any series that's been going for a while and that I've gotten a lot of comments and feedback on, that I just really feel like looking back on what worked about the videos, what didn't work about them. Was the series good? Was it great? Was it bad? Was it terrible? Any of the above. And a way to kind of involve you guys in that conversation is I have asked some questions over the past few weeks. Well, I asked questions in a single video, but I gave you time over the past few weeks while the series was concluding. It concluded on January 4th, I think, maybe 2nd, I don't know. One of those days it finished up. And now I have got the answers to those questions, and I'm going to share some thoughts with you guys as far as how I felt about the series and how you felt as well. So thank you those of you who responded. I'm going to start out with a little bit of story time. For those who are not aware, again, Roman Ascension was my very first series, but there's another layer of history even deeper than that. I started Roman Ascension, indeed the first 100 episodes or more, maybe about 120 episodes of Roman Ascension were live on this channel before any of the channel art was up, before the Roman Ascension series had thumbnails, the thumbnails that I do for all my videos now, before anything was professionally edited or just put together in such a way that it was designed for a larger audience. I obviously always recorded the videos such that when you watched them, when people found them, they would be watchable by a larger audience. It wasn't like I was just recording it for my friends, but the fact of the matter is the people that I shared it with intently in the beginning were just my friends. So Roman Ascension is a very interesting series because over half of it was recorded and completed before I was taking myself as seriously as a YouTuber as I do now, which is not to say I take myself ridiculously seriously. This is a hobby. I'm a part-time YouTuber, as I mentioned in the last look back video, which is linked on your screen right there, if you didn't see it. But it's a unique series. It's the only series in which I kind of really started and recorded over half of it with no intention of being more serious about what I was doing. Even Planet Base, which was my second series, was when I started it, that was the moment where I was like, maybe I could do this. Maybe this would be a fun thing to do on the side. And of course it has been a very fun thing to do on the side, and I'm very grateful to all of you for being here and for offering your feedback and your support and all the positivity and just the awesomeness that has been this small community we have started so far. Hopefully by the time you're watching this, it'll be a large community, which this video is not going anywhere, so at some point we will be there. But for now, we're small, and it's happy, and it's great. So, Roman Ascension featured one of my favorite strategy games of all time, Rome 2 Total War. Or Total War Rome 2, again, depending on how you read the box. Very controversial game. When it came out, when it wasn't the Emperor edition of the game, there were a lot of problems. People were very disappointed compared to the last major release before that, which was Shogun 2, which of course Shogun was the very first Total War ever, and Shogun 2, I only recently played it for the first time, and I can see why people loved it. The game is phenomenal. I haven't played very much of it, but it's great. I was never as much of a fan of that period. Don't get me wrong. I love that period. One of the things that I really think when I think of Shogun is The Last Samurai, the same way I think of Gladiator when I think of Rome 2. So there's definitely some interest there, and I might play it in the future, but I just haven't played it nearly as much as Rome 2. And people were mad because the game did not do well when it came out. And to tell you the truth, that was one of the reasons that I wanted to record the series in the first place. Because when you go on most Total War boards, whether it's Reddit, whether it's Total War Center, whether it's Steam is better, I will say, Steam is better, or especially the Total War forums, there's just a lot of vitriol there's a ton of it. And I'm like, man, this game gets a lot of hate. People are just so bitter about this game. And I started playing it later in the game. I didn't get to experience the frustration. Plus, I never played Shogun 2, so if I'd played it in the beginning, it might not have even made me that mad in the first place. But I didn't play it in the beginning. I played it once it was better. I loved it, and I saw everyone hating on it, and I was like, this is crazy. You know, I like this game. People are entitled to their opinions, but the extent of the anger just astonished me. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to do a Let's Play of this game, and I'm going to have fun with it. And I think it was very successful. I really enjoy it. One of the things that's been very meaningful to me, actually, I really have to thank all of you that watched the series. There are a few of you who picked it up recently, who are still watching it right now. Some of you have already watched it all the way through, and I've seen it happen on my analytics in YouTube. I can see when people are watching certain series because the channel is still small enough to where I can notice when particular people are really spiking. It's not that it gives me individual tracking information, but when the channel's small, you can tell that it's one person watching the series all the way through. It's kind of cool. And I have to thank you guys because you're liking the series. I know it sounds silly to thank someone for enjoying what I do, but again, half of the series was recorded before I had any intention of making Roman Ascension what it eventually became. So I set out with Roman Ascension to make a series in which I fought every single battle. So it was supposed to be really cinematic and show you just every single event in this alternative history that unfolded. And my God, was it an alternative history. We had, we were allies with Carthage for 200 years. We suffered almost no major defeats until the battle at Aboricon in York in Britain. And the game just was, it went very, very well for a long time, which I think ultimately was mostly a consequence of the difficulty level that I played on. If you've watched the introduction to the series, you know that I gave this thoughtful, at least I tried to be thoughtful, kind of detailed reason on, hey, you know, this is just the way I play these games. I'm just going to play it on a simple difficulty because the playing field is pretty even, and I'm not interested in like something super hard. I'd more just enjoy it and enjoy presenting the story. And the spirit of that has definitely endured in my future series. But Roman Ascension, the first real critique I'll make of the series, and this is not so much a critique as it is a commentary on what I've learned from Roman Ascension, and that is that Roman Ascension showed me that I was capable of playing Total War at a difficulty higher than easy. When you are recording, when anyone's recording, you know, and you're really taking the time to present the content, you find that you're even more thoughtful and patient than you are when you're playing by yourself. At least that's been my experience. And so I'm sitting there going, wow, you know, as I got through about halfway through the campaign, especially 3/4 of the way through the campaign, once we really started pushing into the what is now the Turkish peninsula, past the site of Constantinople, which doesn't, of course, exist in the Rome 2 Total War map, but exists in Total War Attila, which we'll see. Once we started getting past that point, battles just started becoming very, very easy, and it just got more and more steamrolly, as this is common in Total War, but because we started out with things going so easily, I think one of the first things that happened for me is as the series was playing through, it became less and less interesting to play because we were kicking everyone's ass. That's just what was happening. And I think in the future, I will definitely be playing Total War games on higher difficulty settings to avoid that kind of steamrolliness. Now, if I play well, which I think I was playing very cautiously as well in this campaign, so we didn't lose battles for a long time, and I think that's always going to be something I try to do. So, to an extent, you can't avoid, you know, having a lot of victories when you are actually trying hard to win all the time. But here's the thing. I don't play these games to seem like a pro or to win every battle or to make every perfect tactical decision. I don't put that much thought into it. I try to sometimes, but if I were sitting here taking the game that seriously, I think it would actually suck the fun out of it for me, and by virtue of that, it would suck the fun out of it for you as the viewer. So that's my take on future difficulty levels as a result of what I've learned from Roman Ascension. Now, something interesting happened with Roman Ascension towards the latter end, but rather than talk about it myself, I'm going to go ahead and jump into some of the questions that you guys asked in the AMA call, because I think you guys will help me address it nicely. So, Jared Boring asked, he says, I noticed later on in the series you started to auto-resolve battles and talk less on the real-world historical aspect. Yeah, I did. Keep up the good work, and I'm enjoying your channel very much. Thanks, Jared. Yes, I did actually talk less about history later in the series, and that was my fault. That had to do with, in the auto-resolving, also, both of these things had to do with the fact that I reached a moment, it was really around the battle for Nicomedia, as we were starting to get into the Turkish peninsula, where I realized, my unit size settings are too high. Now, I've got a pretty nice little rig here. It's not a top-of-the-line rig, but I've got an 8-core, or quad-core, simulated double, so 4 cores literally, 8 cores simulated, processor, 3.2 gigahertz. I've got 16 gigs of RAM. I'm running Windows 10 64-bit. I've got a GTX 980 Ti, so I'm pretty happy with my rig. My CPU can be a bit of a bottleneck with some of the most recent games, but Total War is really, really CPU intensive when it comes to the duplication of the units that show up on the field. What Total War games have done since Rome 1 is they really just render one unit and then they copy it a bunch of times using the CPU. That's what I understand. And so it's rendering these units, and the graphics, processor still has to work through it, but the CPU is really deeply involved. And when your settings are too high, even on a nice rig, with mine, with decent specs for Rome 2, you run into this stutter that happens, like happened in the battle for Nicomedia. And it had happened before. Things got so unbearable in the battle for Nicomedia that as a player at that particular moment, I actually found myself feeling a little bit disenchanted. I was like, because this sounds so corny, but put yourself in my position for a moment. You set out to make this series where you said you were going to fight every single battle, and you knew that you had all these armies, and you had built them up, and you were moving into an area of the world where you had at least 30 more cities to capture. And you were feeling like at least half of those battles would involve multiple armies. And here you were watching one of those such battles all of a sudden start to just stutter and come to a complete halt in the middle of the battle. It's unwatchable to me. Unacceptable. Like, I was sitting there going, this is not... I can't. Like, a little bit of skipping is fine. That's forgivable, especially when people know that it's the engine, not the computer. It's just the way the game is designed. But still, it's not cool. And so I was sitting there, and it really kind of was disheartening. So after that point, I started thinking about the principal battles rules that I've instituted in the Crown of Charlemagne series. And I started thinking about, okay, how can I set up expectations for my viewers where they know, okay, well, this kind of battle, that's really lopsided, or that's the kind of battle he's fought over and over, which that was another thing, is that as I fought more and more battles, it got to a point where even when they didn't stutter, I was like, we've fought this battle before. We've seen this battle before. It got repetitive in some instances. So I wanted to kind of set up rules where it would be understandable. Okay, well, that's a battle we've seen already, or that's a battle that is going to be very, very lopsided and easy to win. There's no stakes there. I mean, you're going to win that. So you can auto-resolve that. It's fine. That was the idea with the principal battles rules. So I started thinking more about that. And on top of that, though, Jared, you mentioned that I started auto-resolving a lot. Yeah, because even some of the city battles that kind of counted as principal battles, I was sitting there in my mind going, is this going to look okay? Is it going to skip? Is it going to be crappy? Because my unit size was set to ultra. So again, there were all these units being rendered by the CPU. That's one detail I forgot to mention earlier in my answer to your question, but my unit size was set all the way up to give the feeling of a massive army. But unfortunately, that was contributing to the bottleneck effect that was making large battles on cities skip. So, you mentioned that I talk less about the historical aspect. I want to comment on that real quick. That stuff is really important to me. I'm not a historical scholar, but when I play a Total War game that's set in that area, I love just thinking about the history and the alternative histories that were unfolding and are unfolding, respectively. And I want to bring that back in future series. So when I do my next series, I don't know as much about the Charlemagne era. I've tried to make some comments in the Crown of Charlemagne series, but I want to be better about it. But when I do my next Total War series, which is going to be in Total War Attila as the Eastern Roman Empire, I really want to... I don't want to build up the expectations too high, but I want to make sure that I... excuse me, that I return to form. There was no stopping that. That I return to form, and that I am providing a lot of historical background and information. So, anyway, Jared, thank you for your question. Robert Bellinger asked me, I've heard a lot of bad and good reviews of Rome 2 Total War. How would you compare it to the first one, and what are your favorite and least favorite parts of the game? P.S. I think you should play Civ 5. I'm going to play Civ 5. I'm going to play Civ 5 next, as a matter of fact, so don't worry about that, Robert. But, yeah, I mean, I commented on the issues with the bad and good reviews of Rome 2 Total War. How would you compare it to the first one? It's better. It's better. I mean, it's a better game, bar none. Like, I understand that there were not as many hitches with the first game, and maybe you can make this weird argument where if you control for the amount of time that's passed, and if you compare the games as if they were side by side released at the same time, Rome might be as good or maybe better. But as it stands, Rome 2 is an improvement in almost every way. I think one major thing a lot of people legitimately were a little disappointed in is that there's not a true family tree in Rome 2 the way there was in Rome 1 and the way there is in Attila. But that doesn't take away from the game being a much better, richer, just more visually impactful experience. So I played Rome 1 pretty extensively when it came out 10 years ago. I enjoyed it. Actually, it's been a little bit more than 10 years. It's been 11 years, hasn't it? But, God, time flies. How else would I compare it? I'm obviously not scripted here, by the way, guys. I've given some thought to how I'd answer your questions, but I like to be authentic in these videos when I'm just doing open commentary. So, how else would I compare it to the first one? I just think it's better. I think the campaign map is better. I think the system for building is a lot more streamlined. I think the way that units are controlled in battles are better. I just think they improved virtually everything. There were a few things, like I said, missing, but again, that game was so old, it's really hard to hold that against Rome 2 when you consider the graphical improvements as well. So I think it's just as good. But anyway, what are your least favorite parts of the game, you asked? I think my least favorite part of Rome 2 is something that I've already mentioned, and that is there's two things, really. There's the fact that the large unit sizes really weigh it down. That's unfortunate. It's kind of a necessary evil for the engine. The other thing that I really dislike, and I've talked about this a lot in the campaign, was the political system. That's one thing I never accomplished in the campaign, was I wanted to form the actual Roman Empire as opposed to just being a massive sprawling Roman Republic. Fun fact, I did a little for fun playthrough on my own, didn't record it, right in like the week after I finished the series. Founded the Roman Empire for the first time ever. Might have been because I was playing on a higher difficulty. I was playing on hard instead of playing on easy. But I founded the Roman Empire. Started the Civil War, resolved it. Had another Civil War, in fact. So I had the option of going back to the Roman Republic. But I founded the Roman Empire. But the political system in the game just doesn't work the way you expect it to. Like, in the beginning it does, you know, where you have a ton of influence and you assassinate the members of other families. Your family's influence just grows astronomically. But it just seems as the game gets further and further along, it doesn't matter if you have no one in the other houses. It doesn't matter. The other houses' influence will just inexplicably grow. And that's unfortunate, because I just think that, you know, I just think that it sure would have been nice to have founded the Roman Empire and the Roman Ascension campaign, and one of the reasons I couldn't is that, like I said, towards the end game, the political system just kind of falls apart. It doesn't work the way it does in the beginning, and you don't know why. And to this day, I have looked for explanations why, and I can't find them. So if you are watching this and you have it, please tell me, because I've looked and I can't find it. So I'm tempted to think it just doesn't work properly. What's my favorite thing about the game? I was talking about the negatives first. Shame on me. What's my favorite thing about it? That's really hard because I love so much about it. I think probably my favorite thing about the game is just the time period. If you haven't noticed, I have a bit of a bias towards the Roman Empire. I've loved it for a long time, and when they finally one day in the distant future, maybe it's 10 years from now, who knows, do Rome 3 Total War, if they do it, I'll be the happiest kid alive. I'll be freaking 15 years old again. Not that I was that young when I played Rome 1. I wasn't, but I'll definitely, it'll turn me into a little kid. So I love the setting. I love the way that Gaius Julius Caesar really shows up as a member of the House of Julia right around the time that he should. I think that's cool. Just the historical authenticity of a lot of the aspects of it, I think is cool. It's not perfect to history, but I really just like it in general. So, James Robb, let me go ahead and get to your questions. James had an entire section dedicated to him because he left me like nearly 10 really thoughtful questions about the channel and about Roman Ascension. And he, in some additional interaction on the look back video in which he had that entire section, he gave some additional thoughts as well. So let's deal with James for a bit. I made that sound so ominous. James, let me handle you. In the Rome 2 campaign, James said, you seem to go from a slow-paced style of gameplay to a quicker-paced one. Was there a specific reason for this? Not that it was a particularly good or bad move, just curious of your thought process at the time. I think I've already kind of talked about that. I think the reason things got quicker is I just began to realize, number one, that battles were getting a little repetitive, and I didn't want to fight repetitive battles. I wanted to fight entertaining battles, and it's not entertaining if you're just watching the same thing over and over. The other reason was that I was just nervous that the Battle of Nicomedia would repeat itself and things would just get choppy and annoying and I would be frustrated, and I didn't want you guys to see my frustration, which is another thing you commented on, which we'll talk about in a bit. I didn't want that to come through. So I wanted to be enjoying the game, because I know when I'm enjoying it, you guys are much more likely to enjoy the videos. So in the Age of Charlemagne campaign, you asked me, I feel you took a different approach to other titles you covered in terms of gameplay, voiceover, and presentation. Was this deliberate? And if so, what was the thought process towards that change? So I can't go too in-depth here because this is a video on Roman Ascension, but again, the answer to this question is about Roman Ascension. The answer to the question really is Roman Ascension in a way. Crown of Charlemagne, just as I was recording Roman Ascension and launching the channel, I was like, man, there are ways I wish I would have done this differently from the beginning. Namely, just the ability to say, here's when I'm going to auto-resolve battles and here's when I'm not going to, so that there's some expectations there and people aren't disappointed when they go, oh, well, I really wish I could have seen that battle. Or on the other hand, oh, I'm really glad he auto-resolved that because I wasn't interested in watching that. So Yeah, I mean that's why the reason I made a different campaign, a different approach in the Age of Charlemagne campaign is I have learned a lot from the Roman Ascension campaign. I went from being a brand new, you know, semi-serious, not serious YouTuber to serious part-time YouTuber. So that's why. And kind of jumping off of your first question, the ending of the series, however, was not so satisfying for me personally, you said. I feel that the series, where it played on a harder mode or with a different faction, could have been longer. Could be argued whether that would be good or bad. I don't know. 200 episodes is pretty long. I have mixed feelings about series that go for over half a year. Anyway, continue your comment. Campaign on a harder mode or a different faction could also have had a less anticlimactic ending, where many of the videos were just, let's stomp him, and oh yeah, him. Yeah, it definitely did turn into that a little bit. And yeah, maybe in the future, a Rome 2 campaign with another faction on a harder difficulty might prove to have a more stable curve of action. I totally agree. And maybe at some point in the future, I will return and do that. I certainly love Rome 2 Total War, and this campaign has been popular. It would be nice to do kind of a redux on the Roman Ascension campaign, but playing as a different faction, maybe playing as Carthage. The problem with playing on some of the interesting factions that I like is that just the unit diversity and the way the units look is not great compared to the diversity and the variety of units you have with the variety of appearances, I mean. So there's diversity of unit types, and then the variety of their appearances is just, I feel like, better when you're playing as Rome. It's really centered around Rome. So I don't know, maybe a campaign of Sparta would be fun. I think maybe a campaign where I didn't necessarily set out to conquer the entire world again, because again, once you get to a certain point, you're like, okay, we've seen that. But a campaign where it's like Sparta's going to conquer Rome, Sparta's going to conquer Carthage, Alexandria. Maybe Sparta's going to recapture Alexander's ancient territory, so it's going to go out into the Middle East and capture Alexandria, Aracosa. So, or I think it's Aracosia. You know what I'm talking about if you watch the series or if you play the game. So that would be cool. I agree with you. The ending for the series, honestly, you know, just to have a real moment of transparency with you guys, when I watch the end episode of Roman Ascension and I listen to my own voice, which I haven't watched the whole thing all the way through, I don't think, but I've watched the beginning 15-20 minutes a couple of times just to see kind of how it feels. You could tell, I could tell that I was tired, you know, that I was kind of ready. Okay, this series has been good, but I'm ready to start it over and do something new. So yeah. It was a little anticlimactic, wasn't it? I think it was good. I'm not going to say that it was a bad ending. I think it's enjoyable. I think there are many people who have enjoyed it, and by the way, I appreciate that very much. I appreciate your comments and your support. I think other people maybe won't enjoy it so much for the very reasons that I've outlined, and that's why future series are going to be bigger and better. Which leads me to, James, your final point. Sometimes when you get bored or disinterested or fed up with the monotony in part of the game, it can become quite apparent and run off to us as viewers. You're absolutely right. And this is a critique that it's the kind of thing that I want to address directly, because it's an accountability piece for me as the channel runner to you as the audience. I am very aware of the fact that in Roman Ascension, when things started getting rough, but in other series sometimes as well, there are just moments where I get annoyed. To a certain extent, I'm never going to be able to completely shut off my emotion, but I think there are ways to spin that will be, like, for instance, being humorous, being a little snarky, as opposed to just being pissy, which there's a big difference, right? Snarky, at least you have wit, and you are trying to make light of a situation, even if it's really annoying you. So that's something that I'm going to gun for in the future. But I definitely appreciate that particular comment, because I think you're right. I mean, I think sometimes that does get the better of me. So thank you for that. Thank you for all your questions, James, and I look forward to your continued viewership. Time Slayer, last but not least, thank you for watching this entire series as dedicatedly as you did. just made a comment that he's glad to see the videos are changing. I'm glad to see it too, buddy, and I hope you'll continue to watch, because I think the videos are just going to keep getting better and better, especially with mechanisms like this in place where we're talking to each other and really making sure that you guys have an input into the process, insofar as you should. You know, this is still ultimately, I'm in the driver's seat, obviously, but your feedback is very important to me. I don't think it would work to have other people in the driver's seat other than me. I think you guys would lose interest then, because ultimately the reason you come to any YouTube channel, whether it's mine or someone else's, is you're interested in the content from the perspective of that particular YouTuber. You might start out interested in the game, but the reason you stick around is, at least I hope, you like the particular way that YouTuber is doing it. So I appreciate you guys very much for watching and for supporting the channel, for subscribing, for commenting, liking the videos, all of that. By the way, James asked another question, which I'll address quickly. This was addressed in the look ahead, but for those of you watching this video who are interested in doing a little bit more as far as supporting the channel, if you're curious what you can do, James did ask, hey, you know, how are things going with the community of the channel so far, and is there anything we can do to support the channel further? There is, and I'll record a video to answer that question very soon. I appreciate you guys asking that question. If you'd like to know, I will let you know. It's very easy, very, very easy to do, and to really help increase the channel's visibility a lot. But anyway, this has been a look back on the Roman Ascension series. Overall, in conclusion, I'm really proud of the Roman Ascension series. I think it was a great note to start the channel out on. It was an imperfect note, but most of the series are going to have their imperfections. I think there's a lot to be happy with for me. There's a lot to work on, but there's a lot to be happy with, and I like that. And one of the biggest things, you know what, no, the biggest thing that I'm happy with is you guys and the support that Roman Ascension has brought to the channel in the form of the subscribers and the comments and the interaction. I love it. I hope it only continues to get better from here. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next look back. Don't know what series it's going to be on, because you really never know when these series are going to end. But next time I end a long-running series, I will definitely do one on the Long Dark series, so I'll look forward to that. But anyway, thank you for watching. I'll see you guys in a bit.